Good morning, students. Today we are learning a new lesson 4.8 Understanding Salts. The objectives are: the first objective is to identify the uses of salt. Second objective is to describe the naming of salt. And the third objective is to differentiate between alkali and base. Now we are discussing about common salt. Sodium chloride is known as common salt. The name given common salt for sodium chloride because sodium chloride is the salt that we are using in our daily life. For cooking food, all the foods we are using a salt, it is sodium chloride. That's why the common salt, the name given for sodium chloride. The formation of sodium chloride that we already discussed in the last chapter, it is formed by the neutralization reaction of sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid. Now we are discussing about the uses of sodium chloride. What are the uses of sodium chloride? As we discussed earlier, the first use of sodium chloride is flavoring food. That we already know, without sodium chloride, the food is not tasty. So, if you want to get taste for the food, we need sodium chloride. So, the first use of sodium chloride is flavoring food. The second use is treating icy roads. We know some countries are very cold. In winter days, the roads are covered with ice. They are using sodium chloride to remove this ice. If we add sodium chloride on the road, its freezing point will be reduced to minus 11 degrees Celsius and they can remove the ice on the road. And the third use is food preservative. To preserve a food, we need sodium chloride. It will be long lasting. The last use is an industrial use. Sodium chloride also can be used in industry for manufacture in chlorine, hydrogen and sodium hydroxide. Means in the production of sodium hydroxide, chlorine and hydrogen gases, we need sodium chloride. By using sodium chloride in industry, they are producing chlorine, hydrogen and sodium hydroxide. Now we are discussing different types of salt and its uses. The first salt is magnesium chloride. Magnesium chloride is used in cement industry for making cement. The other use of magnesium chloride is to absorb dust in places such as excavation sites. The second salt is iron sulfate. The iron sulfate can be used by gardeners to kill moss on lawns. It's a chemical. So, the gardeners can be used this chemical to kill moss on lawns. Otherwise, the lawns will be damaged. The third salt is calcium sulfate. Calcium sulfate is used to make plaster of Paris to treat fractures. If our bones are fractured, we are using a covering on our hand. This covering is called plaster of Paris. This plaster of Paris is made from calcium sulfate. So, our first objective is very clear now. We already discussed the different salt and its uses. The salt and its uses. So, we are going to the second objective, that is naming of salts. How to give name of a salt? We know the salt is having two parts in its name. For example, sodium chloride is a salt. It has two parts, sodium and chloride. The first part of the name comes from alkali, and the second part of the name, it comes from acid. It is used for making a salt. For example, in case of sodium chloride, the name sodium, it comes from sodium hydroxide, and the second name, it is chloride, it comes from hydrochloric acid. So here in the table it is clearly given the name given, how the names are given for acids. If we are using hydrochloric acid, the second name should be chloride. If we are using sulfuric acid, the second name should be sulfate. If we are using nitric acid, the second name should be nitrate. The examples are given here. Magnesium hydroxide plus hydrochloric acid, magnesium chloride and water. Here the salt formed is magnesium chloride. It has two parts, magnesium and chloride. The magnesium, it is the first part of the salt. It comes from magnesium hydroxide. And the second part, it is chloride. It comes from hydrochloric acid. So the same way, if we are using sulfuric acid, the second part should be sulfate. So the salt formed is magnesium sulfate. If we are using nitric acid, the second part should be nitrate. So we are getting the second name as nitrate, and we are getting the salt is magnesium nitrate. So the second objective also very clear, how to name a salt. Now we are going to the third objective, that is differentiate between base and alkali. What is the difference between base and alkali? First we are discussing about base. A base is any substance that neutralizes an acid to produce salt and water. That means in neutralization reaction we are using bases, but it is water soluble. So we can call it as a alkali. That means the difference between base and alkali is, if the base is soluble in water, it is known as alkali. If it is not soluble in water, we called it as base only. So all alkalis are bases, but all bases are not alkali. Why? Because only the water soluble bases are called alkali. So that is the difference between base and alkali. And in the neutralization reaction, we are calling it as a alkali because in neutralization reaction we are using bases, it is water soluble bases. So we can call it as alkali. So our third objective also now very clear, differentiate between base and alkali. I hope you all understood the lesson very well. And have a nice day.